Welcome to the War Room, a weekly roundtable discussion that takes place every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in at 911warroom.com/Zoom.
Welcome everybody, 501. It is March 20th, 2022. Welcome to the 911 War Room. We are live on Facebook. Richard Gage is going to be on George Galloway's Mother of All talk shows here at any minute. I was kind of streaming that earlier, hoping to catch it, but no, he's not. We might break to that real quick. I'm watching it over here in this monitor. We might break to that to see him live on that talk show for a little bit. Thank you for those that are here, and start off with new news. Let me share my screen. Optimize. All right. Other than the biggest news, let me hold off on that one for a second. The 9/11 Pentagon conference happened yesterday. A very long day, as we were just talking about, from Eastern time, 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. And they went wall to wall on that one. We'll come back to that in a second. 9/11 Museum and Memorial adds second to last victim portrait. I guess they had been at a loss of trying to locate a portrait for Albert Ogletree, which they recently got. And now there's one other person, an Antonio Dorset Pratt. They're still looking to get his to complete the 2,983 portraits of victims lost on September 11th. And oddly enough, on top of that, nope, not that story. The 9/11 Tribute Museum in New York City plans to close permanently as admissions dwindle. So they opened 6 years ago, and they're seeing such losses from the pandemic, devastated its admissions numbers, and doesn't seem to be lucrative anymore for them. So they're looking to close the doors. And I find it interesting that the last mention in this article is from a gentleman by the name of Lee Ielpe, who lost his firefighter son in 9/11. I was in the one of the other Facebook groups, Twin Towers, and Lee Ielpe's daughter, the brother of this lost firefighter, was in there and took offense to me sharing 9/11 justice. And we went back and forth, and I was trying to be respectful, but she just didn't want to see any part of it. So I went out on the internet and I actually found a video of her father saying something pretty significant that I just want to share with you. It's not too long here.
9/11. That's what retired firefighter Lee
can anybody hear that?
teaches people every day.
Yeah, it's okay.
Even though he would rather forget.
9/11 is not a day that I want to remember. I want the world to remember it. We sent a beautiful message out there about our strength, about our volunteer spirit. You know, so I want the world to remember that. I don't need to remember the day my son was murdered.
The body of Lee's son, firefighter Jonathan Ielpe, was found still wrapped in his FDNY turnout coat and battered helmet 3 months to the day after 9/11.
Here at the World Trade Center site, out of those 2,749 people that were murdered that day, there are still 1,122 people unaccounted for. Can't find them.
That's why Ielpe stayed on the pile 6 more months, helping other fathers search for their sons. While he forgot about everything else, he says America began to move on.
We forgot about 9/11 a year later, 6 months later, because it didn't happen in Cincinnati. It didn't happen in Washington State, but it did, didn't it? It was on our soil.
So this grieving father pledged to never abandon the World Trade Center site. He co-founded the 9/11 Tribute Center here. More than a museum, it's a learning center.
This could be the answer. I mean, we had to go to war. We demand justice. I mean, that's just the way things are, all right? But we should use...
That's the quote that I just wanted to remember. We demand justice. That's just the way it is.
this
Replay that again real quick.
To educate, to enlighten justice. I mean, that's just the way things... The answer. I mean, we had to go to war. We demand justice. I mean, that's just the way things are, all right?
We demand justice, and that's just the way things are. I don't believe it's going to war. I think he's misled, but we in this room understand that we're after justice.
We should use this episode to educate, to enlighten, to make sure that our young
So if you wanted to see that, it's on my YouTube channel. This is Lee ILP, who co-founded the Tribute Center. We were just covering those that just joined. The museum looks like it might be on its last days. 9/11 Tribute Museum in New York Center, New York City, plans to close permanently as admissions dwindle. And last news article that I had, as far as news articles, 9/11 families battling over the 3.5 billion in Taliban funds. This got more complicated now. Now, 47 people that were killed during the terror attacks have their families battling against the other 3,000 people that were lost in this money that the Taliban had. So this puts these victims' family members against the other victims' family members and trying to get some of this 3.5 billion in Taliban funds. And, it's leaving some of the other victims' family members upset because it should be evenly divided amongst all the victims' family members. If you believe going into Afghanistan and totally destroying their country and taking their money is legit, but
what's the distinguishing factor between the two groups of victims members?
To be honest, Ed, I got confused on it. I read this 3 times and I'm still confused on. The conflict erupted in September, a month after the Taliban seized Afghanistan, when lawyers for about 150 members of the 47 families in a lawsuit called Havlish versus Osama bin Laden quietly broke away from the rest of the 9/11 victims community through a legal maneuver.
Lawyers, never mind, lawyers.
So they saw money. Yeah, that's about it. The family's in a position to grab the money first. That's lawyers. Yeah, good point. Thank you. So that's those 3 news articles. Let me see, make sure that's covering all that. I guess we could move on to the 9/11 Pentagon, which was exhausting, but it so needed done. I think Richard did a great job, the best he could. It got a little hairy in a couple spots, a lot of pot shots thrown from everybody, but Thierry Masson, wow, I finally said it right. He, of course, he wasn't throwing pot shots because that conversation was in French, and Sandra again did a wonderful job in trying to translate what he was saying with the help of Jean-Marc. So I think he got his point across. He didn't get into quite as many details as I think some of us would have expected, but it was difficult with the translation. Outside of that, the few pot shots back and forth, altogether, I think it was an amazing conversation. I did want to just play a clip from that I set up. And this was a question I asked for everyone. Would each person share? Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam.
Oh, here we go.
No, don't judge. Don't bring judge.
I'm not. I love him. I love you, Adam. Just
hold on. Nelson, I got to let you go. Okay. I'll be with.
Nelson's welcome to be here too.
No. I'm here, and I'm not bringing anybody else in here. Just me.
All right, brother. Thank you for being here. Yeah. So what I was going to do is I was just setting up a clip from the Pentagon conference yesterday. It's a question that I asked on would any of the speakers be willing to be part of a roundtable discussion with Richard as moderator in the future? And I think what Richard broke in here and said was really kind of good. Hi, David. Thank you for being here as well. So I just want to play this little bit of this clip here. So bear with me. Oh, now I'm getting ready to hit play. And I'm not getting any video or audio. Here we go.
This is from Gene, and this is a great question, very appropriate for the moment. He says, question for anyone. Would each person share a way in which we as a 9/11 truth movement can come together on the Pentagon? Would any of the speakers be willing to be a part of a roundtable discussion with Richard as a moderator at a future date? And that's actually would be more appropriate than doing it now, when this is just a question from our attendees at the conference.
The answer is yes.
Yes. Good.
Well, I would be willing to have that sort of discussion.
Mhm.
but we're not going to come to any agreement until we thoroughly dissect the evidence.
That is key right there that I want to say. Adam being gracious enough to say, yeah, no problem with it. We're just really going to have to flush out, and I think Adam can agree with this. We have to flush out every bit of evidence, and it's going to be a whole lot of back and forth, which somebody's about to say here.
Mhm.
And discuss it back and forth each point.
And sorry,
And
for
that's
Adam.
going to take time.
Good point.
And I would not participate in such a discussion unless I was able to be honest about what I see in the other positions. I'm not going to do something where I have to be falsely respectful.
Objective.
I mean, well, objective. It's not nobody's objective. We're
Well, some
but-
people make a better attempt. For instance, I've noticed Xander's objectivity to be extraordinary, even though he disagrees.
All right, I have to pause this for a second because Richard came live on the George Galloway show, and I just wanted to share that while he's on here. So let me drag this over real quick. Richard is live right now. There's 3 million viewers for George Galloway. So let me play this now.
Columns had to have been removed at
Just play a
once
couple minutes of
in
this. and
order for
we'll
it
get
to
back.
fall without any resistance from any one of them.
Richard, of course, giving his standard spiel.
That's always been the most puzzling aspect. One could talk about the Pentagon, the weirdness of the story about the Pentagon building, but Building 7 is on the face of it inexplicable, isn't it?
Yeah, Darin.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it is absolutely inexplicable because it's the official story. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, 7 years later, came out with a report. And in the report, they said, well, it came down due to normal office fires. Well, office fires have never brought down a steel frame fireproof skyscraper in history ever. It just doesn't happen. And yet on 9/11, we have not 2, but 3 protected, fire
Oh,
protected
whoops, I'm not
steel
live. Let me
frame.
drag forward. Ah,
No. You can vote on my Twitter account, on
Well,
my
that was
YouTube
short.
channel, and on
let me go back.
All of them, including Building 7, which wasn't hit by a plane. In the Twin Towers, they say that the fireproofing was knocked off by the plane.
That's the key point. We'll turn to the Twin Towers in a minute, but let me launch this poll, Richard. The poll is simple. Do you believe the official 9/11 account? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on my Twitter account, on my YouTube channel, and on my Telegram channel. But that's the key point. Building 7
That's
was
great.
not struck by an
81%
airplane.
of his viewers
So
are
how
saying
could
no.
it fall like flat as a pancake in its own footprint from quote-unquote normal office fires? And if the story about Building 7 is less than the truth, perhaps even flatly untrue, that of course in a knock-on effect calls into question the official narrative of the Twin Towers themselves, doesn't it?
Necessarily, it does. And when we look at the forensic evidence in the aftermath of all
Thank you for
3
joining, Darin.
buildings,
This is
we
live right
find
now.
the evidence
on
of
George Galloway
ignited
shows.
and unignited incendiaries. Now, most of this is provided from official sources, like, for instance, OSHA and FEMA themselves, which document extreme temperatures way beyond what jet fuel or office fires can produce.
He's going to go to break
Those
here in a
are
second.
about
We'll cut off
500
then.
degrees Fahrenheit to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, double that. Cut that in half for Celsius. But what we have is the documentation of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 1,500 Celsius, and in the forms of molten iron, molten steel, again and again. The structural engineers, the World Trade Center structural engineer himself, Leslie Robertson, talking about a river of steel flowing. This is documentation of of the effects of thermite, as FEMA does in their
All
opinion.
right, we'll come back to that again. This is right now, Richard is live with George Galloway on the mother of all talk shows in London or over there across the Atlantic. I don't know where. Let me drag that off the screen again. We'll check back on that again later. So it's continuing with what we were talking about here. Richard is cutting in with why he would have some trouble and concern with trying to moderate a future roundtable discussion. I think he expressed this very well.
So one of the reasons I won't be moderating such is because I have a failure in some measure here today and tonight despite repeated requests to be respectful and objective, and if you're not going to want to comply with those types of requirements, then I don't want to be moderating. So I appreciate your need, though, Craig.
Can I ask you a question, Richard?
To call a spade a spade, and I think that's what you're trying to do, and I think that comes from a sincere place, but it's just not part of what I'm trying to achieve here. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, for an example, Chandler and Costi presented a slide, and Chandler said that this is the CIT witness path on that slide, and that is not the CIT witness path at all. It's nowhere close to the. So that's a factual error that we
talked about that, and I took it out.
So that's a good example of
that,
things that we would need to flush out with going back and forth.
And I don't know, David can answer that. Gail, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say it might be good to stick to just answering the question, which was, who would be willing to partake in a roundtable discussion, but not to have that actual roundtable discussion right now.
No.
Just to answer that question,
I think
yes
we got
or
the
no,
buy-in
would you
from
be willing
everybody.
to?
They would all want to be part of that, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I just wanted
in 20
to
years we haven't had that. That's awesome.
Which was, would we share a way in which the 9/11 Truth Movement can come together on the Pentagon? And to me, you start with assembling all the evidence, the physical forensic evidence that you can agree on. This is a photograph. This is what happened. 16-foot hole. What do you know about the 16-foot hole? So the place to start is looking at the physical evidence, figuring out what the message is in the evidence that you can gather, and then
we're almost done
working back from there to what happened, what impacted, blah, 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 blah. And that's where you start, a round table talking about the physical damage, and then you can figure out, and if you come up with...
I would suggest we talk about the witnesses first.
The witnesses only tell you where to look. Okay,
that's a difference in a value system there.
Yeah,
I guess
there's
witnesses
a whole
versus
different approach.
Yeah,
to each
no,
of
good
our
point.
positions.
Adam, Barbara, you were next.
Yeah, just a couple of points here. The major disagreements, for instance, on the composite photograph are
I think she gets into a particular, so we don't need to go there, but we see the hurdles, we see the difficulties, and we're all a little rubbed raw from this. It's very raw right now. On that note, something I do every 5:20 every day is just say a quick prayer. So if you're not religious, just chill out for a second. Bear with me. Just a moment of silence here for 5:20 for justice. So Lord, I just lift this up to you right now. I thank you for all these people whose hearts are so into this. No matter what side we fall in, we're all part of the 9/11 Truth Movement. We all just want to see justice in the end. We all have our different views on how we want that to be done, but we can agree that we do want it done. And Lord, I just ask that you would continue to protect and guide us in the words that we are to share with other people. I do a bad job at that, Lord, and I'm not a great witness. But Lord, we just ask for a prayer of protection around the Lawyers Committee, Mick Harrison, Richard and Gail as they venture onto these new beginnings. And again, that you would just walk with us and guide us as we continue to grow as the 9/11 Truth Movement. Thank you for all these things in your name. Amen. Thank you all for that. I appreciate the respect in that. Gail, wonderful to see you. Thank you for being up. You're muted, I think. And I do see Richard still live with George right now. I still can't hear Gail. Is it just me or is everyone?
What are you talking about?
I don't hear Gail.
No, it's Gail has herself muted somehow, I think.
Somehow she's muted, but she is there.
She doesn't show as, I don't know, she doesn't show, not from our end.
Somehow you're muted.
Can you hear me?
There we are.
Yes, yes.
You can?
Yep. Thank you for
Oh,
joining.
okay. I had my earbuds in, so maybe they're not connected right. Richard's right below me doing his George Galloway interviews, so.
Yep, I see him in the side monitor watching intently. He's
So I got to talk quietly. So I don't know if he can hear me down there.
There he
I'm
is.
outside.
He's live right there.
Oh, sweet. Hi, honey.
Thank you all for being here. Let's just move into the Pentagon discussion because I can imagine our Adam's here, Darin's here. Thank you guys for joining. David's here. David had a great idea after this because it got a little heated this morning. And Darin, I'm sorry. I get irritable and I'm just as fault at throwing stupid stuff out too. And Adam, I owe you an apology too. Just we're all the 9/11 truth movement. We're all just irritable on how we expect it to be done. And I just shared a clip where Richard had shown his concerns on why he would have trouble in trying to moderate such a discussion. And it's trying to let that everybody would be objective and respectful of each other. And that's just going to be an issue. It's difficult. David threw out a suggestion, and I just want to share that, and then I'll open the floor up. I'm just going to read through it real quick. So we had an idea with Richard about him coming up with a curriculum, kind of like a certification, where we had what Richard has taught through the years doing his seminars was the evidence for building 1, 2, and 7. Foundational evidence that the Lawyers Committee has now presented in a grand jury investigation, 60 exhibits. If he could go through that we've heard for years, what Richard and the AE 9/11 Truth have put together, that laying the foundation of what we know. And David threw this idea out. The 9/11 con event resulted in the discussion among some of the presenters at the end of the day who have had a history of being extremely contentious with each other. One ray of light in the darkness was when one CIT presenter showed material in which he attempted to prove, that would be Xander, help me. Why am I forgetting Xander? Arena, thank you. That no 757 was shown in the videos crossing the Pentagon lawn. He did this using quantitative measurements. The two of us who believe a 757 did indeed cross the Pentagon lawn rather than react offensively welcome this presentation as the kind of discussion we could get our teeth into. In other words, actually engaging jointly with the evidence in terms of the physics and mathematics of the situation, rather than just engaging in heated verbal disagreements, was seen as a potential way forward. Waking up the day after the marathon, I think I see an opening for resolving some long-standing ideas of conflict in the movement. I am known in the movement for bringing my physics and math teaching into play, measuring the videos and building collapses, etc., using open source software tools. I found the program's tracker and
GeoGebra.
Thank you, to be particularly useful in downloading and free. Besides using these tools, these projects involve knowing or learning some geometry, trigonometry, and some basic physics. I'm into teaching. The purpose of my 9/11 analysis projects has been not to impress or wow anyone, but to look at the 9/11 with clear eyes. My desire, which I'm sure everyone would agree that's what they're trying to do, my desire would be for others in the movement to do the same and learn to do the same. I've benefited greatly by collaborating with a number of the other technically skilled colleagues in the movement. These people have brought overlapping but not identical skill sets into the table, making collaboration valuable. So, his proposal. I will teach an online seminar, The Physics of 9/11, for any and all of the movement and our interested people skeptical of the movement, where we will learn the necessary math and physics and tackle a list of problems that arise in studying 9/11. This has the potential to lead to consensus on 9/11 issues by coming into the consensus on technical issues. This will be an online Zoom course with recorded sessions to be posted online. And I won't read all of those, but the problem sets and basically teaching a course in physics and math. And I think I would love to work with Richard in creating workbooks for his evidence. And if you gentlemen have geopolitics, that if there could be a curriculum around geopolitics, I would welcome that as well. But I don't, right now, in my opinion, the lawyers committee has only utilized what Richard and AE 911 Truth has done for legal measures. Even the Pentagon right now is not being utilized in legal measures, although with my FOIA request and Mick Harrison, we're now moving forward with that. We're going to push for litigation in that aspect.
You want some combo pizza, honey? Mick did state in his comment yesterday during the event that if there is any other evidence such as geopolitics that should be considered, that he's more than willing to take a look at that.
Yes, he did say that. So and I did ask Ed if he could, or you guys could put something in together concisely to present to Mick. He would welcome that. He's looking for stuff like that. So
Jane, Richard just joined the call.
I see that. Welcome, Richard. We were kind of keeping an eye on you and George Galloway. We actually watched it for about 2 minutes and then came away from that. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It turned out really well. George is really coming along. He gave us a lot of kudos there.
Excellent.
I was interested in the percentages that they put on the board.
Yeah, well, guess what? 90 to 94% of his audiences across the board, Zoom, YouTube, etc., said, no, I don't believe the official story. And about 6% said, yes, I do believe the official story. So that was pretty amazing to hear.
Yes, it is.
And would his audience already be inclined to question? I don't know his show at all. Would he be the kind of person who would already have that kind of an audience that would be skeptical of any official narrative, or is it mainstream?
He himself was skeptical. Just 5-7 years ago, but he had me on anyway. He was very skeptical on the show. And he shook his head, no, I can't go there, or something like that, then now he's like all on board, but he doesn't want to follow the political implications of this because he can't afford to. So he's stuck right at that point.
All right. Thank you. What we were also just discussing, I showed the clip of the question I had about doing a future roundtable and your concerns, and they were very good concerns. And also there was a little heated email that went on this morning, which I just apologized to Darin and Adam for. David also shared a wonderful idea of coming out with some coursework that we had kicked around an idea there.
Did you have a chance to see that, Richard?
Yeah, I read that. That's a great idea. Thank you for offering the opportunity for people to learn more about objective analysis, scientific analysis. That's great.
Can I say a few words about the idea? Because
Please do.
Read
yes.
through it.
And then we'll open up
the concept I had in mind is one of the things that I guess was it Jane? I can't remember.
Jane Clark.
Jane Clark, right? She asked what our backgrounds were. Okay. And so like I have a background in physics and math and master's degree and stuff like that. And a lot of these guys, like they have like an AA degree or degree in psychology or various other things. So it's a huge diversity of background and everybody jumps in, talking about physics and math and stuff like that as though everybody's their own expert. And some of the stuff is sort of deficient. But then again, what had occurred to me was in order to have to be able to bring the whole group up to speed, whoever is going to be in this project, it would be like more of a seminar type of an approach. And I could basically provide lessons on the various background elements of this, like a little introduction to trig at some point, or a little introduction to this or that, or basically the physics of circular motion. You get G's and centrifugal forces, and all of those things come into play. But so just sort of like a fill in the gaps thing on the teaching aspect of it, but it would be sort of like have a list of problems, treat them like a, in a class, a list of problems that we are interested in solving, such as like the deflection of the path that went around the Sitgos gas station, and come up with, well, so Craig McKee doesn't like my assumptions. All right, let's simplify the problem. Let's put in a variety of assumptions and see where it goes. But to get everybody to where they can actually participate in working it out for themselves, rather than so McKee shouldn't theoretically have to listen to me. He ought to be able to work it out for himself, but he probably can't. But if
don't say that.
everyone were brought up to speed, maybe they could,
Yes.
So that was the idea, is to try to achieve some level of education on it without being it. I didn't want to have a top-down classroom structure, but have it more of like a problem-solving seminar kind of a thing, and then have other people. Like, I learn a lot from people that have background that I don't. So I've done a lot of work with Tony Zambodi, and I'm able to contribute to that conversation, and he brings in a different perspective because he's into the strength of the materials and the bending and all that. But I'm better on some of the math than he is. And so he and I collaborate. Like, we actually showed, I actually proved as part of I contributed to his spreadsheet on the subject. You take that beam that's supposed to expand and push the girder off its seat and all that. Well, I calculated as you heat the beam, you're going to get bending as well as expansion, which would be pushing. And the thing is that as you heat the beam and it pushes, that's not the whole story, because the beam also will start to sag, which is doing the opposite. It turns out that as you start heating the beam, it goes through a maximum, and you can never possibly push it past a certain point, because then the sagging dominates. Okay, well, that calculation was his understanding of some of the engineering aspects of it. Like, he had the table for in terms of the ability of, something about the sagging and all that.
I love you, but you're getting a little technical.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He brought his technical expertise, and I brought my expertise, and putting them together, we came up with a formula we were able to actually prove that you could not possibly ever, no matter how much you heat that beam, you're never going to push it off the seat.
Right.
So that was something we came up with collaboratively.
Going back and forth.
And what I would have to say to that, as much as I love the idea, where I worry is that you're going to attract those people who are probably already agreeing with that whole aspect of it. And those people who have an issue with, your angle are probably the very ones who would not join or be open to learning more about the physics, the math, and everything behind it. So it would become a little bit of a version of a preaching to the choir situation, where the problem is not as much the physics, even though it is, and the technical knowledge it is as well. The problem is people's internal defense mechanisms and their unwillingness to look at anything else, their insistence and needing to be right about their theory. Everybody's invested in their perspective, and to open themselves up takes a very high, not IQ, but a very high EQ. And that's what's lacking in most people who are trying to have this discussion. It's not the intelligence part. Believe it or not, it's the emotional resistance. It's all it is.
Thank you for that, Sandra. Let me just say that everyone just be aware, we are live on Facebook and we are recording. But go ahead, David, and then we're going to go to Ed.
Okay. Look at the degree of unanimity on this topic among the Scientists for 9/11 Truth group. These are a bunch of guys that actually share technical overlap, and they can actually see and understand and verify stuff for themselves. So they are able to at least follow a discussion, if not do it themselves. And so if you take that whole list of people that came to the same conclusion because they're looking at the same data and they know how to process it, that's a sign of hope. And you get in with people who, you know, if I'm just seen as the one guy, you know, pointing at this and here's my expertise, let me tell you the way it is, there are people who are just going to turn it off. But if it's not just me telling it, if it's a consensus among people who are studying these problems, and like Xander, all right, he showed enough competence in what he did that if he were to engage on, so I can engage with his problem. He's talking about the optics of showing the plane going across the lawn. Well, I know some subtleties that he's overlooking, but that's a position where we can actually get into looking at it together. And if we actually can deal with the substance of it together, it's not just an authority thing.
Which is
So
what
if you can
Adam
bypass
Ruff,
the authority and get into actually grappling with the issue itself.
which is what Adam Ruff said, and there would be, we'd have to look at every bit of evidence, and there'd be a lot of back and forth. That's the lot of back and forth. And unfortunately, when we
Well,
have like meetings,
That's why I was saying in sort of a seminar kind of a deal where it can be a discussion based kind of a course, you know, like
Yeah.
a grad school seminar course.
Yep. Thank you. And for anybody that doesn't know, it would be helpful if you use the hand raise feature, which is under down at the bottom. There's a reactions and raise hand. Put you guys in an order, like a stack, so I can call on you. So it doesn't get crazy here. So
Right.
Ed and then Darin.
Ed and Darin, but I also would like to give Richard a chance. I don't know if you wanted to speak specifically, weigh in about yesterday.
I think Richard stepped out for just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ed, you're up, buddy.
I would definitely like to speak about yesterday. First of all, I think Richard and Gail did a good job as far as the format and the moderating and things like that. It could have been an easy thing to do, putting on an event like that. With that, and then with respect to like some of the presenters and the presentations that were made, I'm trying to figure out why. Well, I mean, obviously they gave the presentation yesterday, but from this point on, it's like I'm looking at the Craig and Adam's presentation. Xander, as far as I'm concerned, saved their presentation because Craig and Adam, if you look at their position, it hinges on eyewitness testimony who have a north side flyover, who testified at north side flyover. The same eyewitnesses, such as Lagasse, also testified to the plane. They've seen the plane impact the building. So it's very strange that they would accept the witness testimony of the north side flyover and at the same time reject that same witness testimony when it comes to the impact of the building.
I think that's
So
a perfect example of where we just need to go through each piece of evidence and go the back and forth.
But that's prima facie on its face what they're doing. It's like it's not even it's just logical. It's like they're literally saying, like, yes, this witness is credible because it fits our narrative, but when it comes to them witnessing the impact, he's no longer credible. And that to me is it just completely flies in the face of logic. And I don't know why we give that sort of reasoning credibility at all within a movement.
I guess that question just needs to be asked to them, and would they concede to it, or do they have evidence that would further complicate that question? I guess maybe they have something there. I don't know. I don't see it, but yeah, good point.
But it's a good point about the cherry picking, the evidence that suits us.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, you're muted a little.
Gosh.
There you go. I mean, you're good, but it was hard to hear you.
Okay, that's weird. It was just a good example about cherry picking of evidence that was referred to. I don't remember by who yesterday, but yeah, we tend to do that, and that's the problem with irrationality, right? We're all guilty of that, of cherry picking, you know, the thing that makes our case, right? So how do we set that aside and look at it objectively? That said, Ed, I don't think that everything, you know, hinges on that on that particular testimony. You can't hear me.
There, yeah, I guess you got to get close to your microphone today for some reason.
That's so weird. There's nothing different than usual.
Ed, do you have anything else? And then we'll move on.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot to unpack from last night, but I mean, to me, I mean, like, for example, when they were showing, like, Barbara was showing images of debris. Craig, I think, or Adam were also showing images of debris, but then they didn't show images like David and Wayne showed of, like, the huge, landing gear strut that was inside the Pentagon, and those other larger pieces that was, I'm trying to understand why we take this cherry picking seriously.
Okay, that is a problem. Cherry picking is a problem.
I don't get it.
Good point.
Oh,
Thank you.
and on the other side of that equation, it's interesting that regarding that pile outside the exit hole, I find that pile a fascinating study because you do have landing gear, you do have a wheel, but the official story claims there's something like 40 pieces of bodies found there, and I have a hard time seeing any of them or wondering why the photo, when the photo was taken with the smoking hole, were they so small that you couldn't see them at that point?
Or
why
even
weren't they
Xander's-
splattered on, why weren't they splattered on the wall across the AE drive, along with other debris damaging that wall, which is undamaged?
Or even Xander's photo, that first photo that didn't show the white pipe, that David definitely showed the white pipe was there, but his photo, Xander's photo, did not have that white pipe in the wall. And that threw me for a loop. But Ed, any more? And we'll move on to Darin.
No, I would take up the entire meeting. Sorry.
Thank you. Darin, you're up, brother.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Good. My thing is, with the Pentagon, this is more geared to Richard, and critical of his guests he's been interviewing. I'm not gonna be rude or nothing. I'm gonna be,
Please, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just critical. He's got a big voice in the movement. Okay, he's a big figure.
Thank you.
Your interviews, like with Dave Von Cleese, a known no-planer, people like Thierry Mason who believe a missile hit the Pentagon. Why are you interviewing those people when you have somebody like James Schwartz, who was an incident commander who was there? This guy was there. Those guys weren't there. He's there.
Writing down these names.
Yeah, you know me, don't you, Gene? If you'll help me find him, Darin, I'll have him on.
James Schwartz was the incident commander. He arrived 6 minutes after Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. He saw the plane debris. He saw the plane parts, everything. They even found one body of a passenger that was charred. One body when they got there. I think that's the thing, and only one person has interviewed him, and that was Adam Fitzgerald. He's the only one that's ever interviewed him. I think that's where the frustration kicks in, is like, we're not interviewing people who were there. He's a perfect example for a person to interview, somebody who saw firsthand, witness being there.
Well, I brought in Adam Eisenberg, who was there for more than half a month and was inside the Pentagon. So I'd be happy to counterbalance that. In fact, we tried to do that with a set of witnesses on the other side of the equation.
I saw the interview, but Adam doesn't know, but he doesn't believe the plane hit the Pentagon. He doesn't know.
Well, whatever his beliefs are, he's a witness, and so is the incident commander. What's his name again? Schwartz?
James Schwartz.
James Schwartz. Will you help me to find him? I'll have him on. I'd love to.
Thank you.
I'm neutral on this issue. Frankly, after hearing after hearing four incredible presentations, I don't know what I believe anymore. They were all very convincing in their in many of their respective points.
I get it. And I just think, too, though, it's like we have to go eyewitnesses are big. And I know no eyewitnesses saw a missile hit the Pentagon. I know 86 plus witnesses that saw a plane hit the Pentagon. I saw it. There's plane debris. There's DNA from passengers being recovered. I think that's very important to go by. And that's why they think there's a big split in the movement, because we got the one side, who believes kind of, missile or explosives. Then we have the one side that believes, Flight 77. But the Flight 77 has the evidence. And I think Chandler and Costi do a great job of presenting that.
I think one thing we can all agree on in this room is the most contentious issue in the 9/11 movement is the Pentagon.
But it shouldn't be. That's the thing. It shouldn't be. It should be one of the easiest things to look at and conclude. That's what I have issue with.
Ray, you're up, and then David.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to start off with a compliment for all who participated and organized the conference yesterday. It was a long one, and it was filled with a lot of information and a lot of people who are convinced of their thought. But I want to take it back in the sense that the Pentagon is a story that was told to us in reports and media and et cetera, et cetera. And if you look at reports and you read them, then you kind of see that we were not told the whole truth. So something is missing there. There's a piece missing that we were never told. And I asked the question yesterday about body parts being found in front of the Pentagon. And nobody thought that body parts were outside. But there's a logic missing. If you have plane debris outside the Pentagon, where it's a passenger plane, and there's plane debris, why is there no body parts? If you believe there is no body parts, and if there were body parts, why do we not know that there were body parts found in front of the Pentagon, where they were found, the size of them, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a piece missing in the whole narrative of the Pentagon. It was cleaned up in 2 days. The first, it was the lawn in front of the Pentagon, and then they moved outward. They moved to the cemetery even. They looked along the cemetery. They looked over the highway on the other side. And I think that's one of the things that we have to realize, that if there's plane debris outside of the Pentagon, there must be body parts outside the Pentagon, because that's logic. And I seem to there's no focus on what was found on the highway, on the lawn, even against the cemetery, there's Arlington Cemetery, the line. They were searching that part with paper bags, the FBI. That's 600 meters from the point of impact. If debris travels that far in the opposite direction, something will happen there with a great amount of energy. And
let me just introduce that Ray is our explosion guy. Everything leads to
if you do not understand explosions in the sense of what they are, how do you comprehend 9/11? And that's one of the major things that we have to focus on, is getting to the point, looking at the official story, in the sense that what they did not investigate. We were not told the whole truth, and that's why we are fighting each other to get the truth. But we were not told the truth by the FBI to begin with.
Well, I think we all agree on that. And I thought all the groups agreed that there were other explosions that went on in the Pentagon.
Not all.
No,
there were
okay, my bad on that.
Parties that excluded the thought, but there were parties that thought. But it's getting your head around the fact that if an explosion happened, can we define that explosion? Was it ever calculated? Is the blast pressure of the explosion ever calculated? Not in the official reports. Nowhere. It's nowhere to be found. The whole explosion is left out of the what took place there.
Thank you.
If you have a powerful explosion, you wreck a plane into confetti. It's that simple.
I have thrown the question out to Richard about the possibility, my theory, that the Wedge 1 renovations, did they put these explosive panels in the wall that Wayne Costy talked about with World Trade Center 1 and 2?
I don't even want to say
it's just a
what
theory.
Explosions were, but there were explosives used on that on the attack. And if they were in the plane or in the building, that's not even necessary to understand. To understand is what happened there in that explosion was so powerful that the window shook in the Sheraton Hotel. It was so powerful that there was a detonation. 2,000-pound bomb, it was described as the sound of a 2,000-pounder going off. If you look at it, Afghanistan, you look and you listen to those explosives going off, that's massive.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really massive. And jet fuel is not an explosive.
You're right.
It's that simple. It's that simple.
Thank you, Ray. Yes.
Okay.
David and then Adam. And just be mindful that we got a lot of people here, so let everybody other talk. I'm not going to whip out the timer.
I got my hand up at first to respond to Richard on the body parts in the debris spilling out of the C-ring. We're talking about fragments. And if you look at the DNA database, take any one, you basically hover on any one of the little ovals there, and it'll show all the other ovals that represent the same person will light up. I had to cut my presentation short, but I had this demonstrated there. Like they have like a worker in the Pentagon who was up sort of maybe in the C or D, I mean, in the D or E ring, somewhere up in there. And you have body parts from there all the way to the C ring exit hole for that one person. And there was a number of cases like that. And these body parts are strewn in the direction of flow of, like the direction of flight of the plane. They're not spread out radially, they're spread out along the path. So it's like the plane comes in, you're sitting at your desk, you get hit, part of you is left there, part of you is deposited somewhere else along, and some fragment gets deposited outside the C-ring exit hole. There's lots of, in fact, there's testimony from people who are early on the scene that said that pile outside the C-ring, the odor of the dead bodies was overwhelming. So yeah, there are body parts there. It's sort of like looking for hamburger. You know, it's like there's small parts. They use dogs to find all of the body parts and so forth. As far as the explosion, the front lawn thing, Wayne and I, and again, we didn't get to it, but Wayne was discussed in particular, you know, the large items that are left on the front lawn. It's not just random parts of the plane. You can actually, like, take that thing that has the lettering on it. You can actually see where the plane, when it intersects the tree, it scrapes off just to the right of the cockpit. That's where that letter came from. And that got scraped off as the plane intersected the tree. And that got mangled with the tree parts, and it sort of took the same trajectory as all the little tree fragments. And the air mass that was following the plane, filling in behind the plane, all that turbulent air is what it required. How do you take a handful of leaves and throw them 50 yards? They're not going to go more than 5 yards because of the air. But if you have the air itself carrying those leaves, they can go for long distances. And in fact, when you see the explosion, or whatever you want to call it, the big fireball / explosion or whatever, there are fragments from there, and you can actually see them landing in the foreground near the cameras. And you can actually account for some of those parts basically from there. So it's the reason there are not body parts on, I'm rejecting the explosions thing until you can show me evidence of explosives. But as far as the body parts being in front of the Pentagon, they were encased inside this cylinder. And that cylinder entirely went into the Pentagon. And when they did the DNA search, they found everybody in the plane and among the killed workers, with the exception of one passenger who was a child. There was one passenger, they found no parts of her DNA. And so if you basically account for finding all the body parts there, yeah, there might have been a fragment outside, but you have to come up with a mechanism to get it out. And yeah, if you're going to initiate an explosion inside, like you're suggesting, like a bomb, yes, you can picture it being thrown out. But in fact, there's no other evidence. If you look at the damage itself, it is impact damage. You can see where things were pushed in, where things were crumbled on the outside, and it fits entirely. You can explain every single bit of that damage by impact, and there's nothing there that is characteristic of like the shattering kind of an effect of having like a bomb go off or something.
Thank you, David. Adam, you're up.
Hey, Gene. Thanks for inviting me. Listen, you don't have to apologize to me. I know how you are, and we're fiery people.
Everybody knows how I am. Sorry.
It's no. Listen, you don't have to apologize. But you know, my frustration comes from the obvious. Is that, look, I'm in my room. I have a bedroom here, and people tend to call me shill and operative and all the types alike, because people think that I'm agreeing with the official narrative. And the official narrative, from my estimation, from people I speak to on the truth movement, is the official narrative is the following: 19 men with box cutters hijacked 4 planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and Shanksville. That's it. For most people, that's the official narrative. And I want to say that that's a misconception. Why? Because that is a microcosm of what's written in the 9/11 Commission report. Now, for most people, they never read the 9/11 Commission report. I have it uploaded, and I have it uploaded on my WordPress for free. You can read it chapter by chapter. Now, just because I believe that planes were hijacked by 19 guys, there might have been maybe 1 or 2 that didn't. That's a theory I'm working on. But there were more planes that were going to be hijacked. But let's outside of that. Just because I believe men hijacked planes and crashed them doesn't mean that I agree with the official narrative.
Right.
Have you read the official narrative? Do you know what the story they were telling? I'll tell you what the 9/11 Commission report is. Commission report is basically incomplete. There's some that is there's some parts of it that's true. There's some parts of it that's false. Most of it is missing. And this is the missing parts I'm trying to allude to the people. But I can't reach those people, because if you don't believe in hijackers, if you don't think there were hijacked planes crashing anywhere in 9/11, guess what? I'll tell you who you absolved in the process. The CIA, the NSA, the Israeli Mossad, the Saudi GID. You're probably thinking, how? How is that possible? Well, guess what? Who were the CIA and NSA monitoring in Germany and in Afghanistan? Who were the Israelis and Saudis monitoring inside the United States? Guess what? If there's no hijackers, none of these operations, none of these governments, none of these intelligence rings don't exist. You don't have celebrating Israelis in New Jersey. What are they celebrating? An empty plane? Nothing happens. If there's no planes, what are they celebrating? All of this disappears. And you have to question these people who propose these theories. Why are they doing it in the first place? Yesterday, I sat through most of the conference. I did. And it was 12 hours. That's a long conference. And got to give a little bit of credit to Gage and Gail for them putting up with the 12 hours. It's tiring to sit in front of a computer for 12 hours, all right? At the same time, I'm frustrated that they would give attention to the very people who are dragging the truth movement into the gutter. And
okay, now that's the difficult. Let me just interrupt just for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
The difficult.
Wait, you're gonna roll.
Well, hang on.
He's
Just
trying-
I just want to interject that, you know, for 20 years we haven't had a roundtable discussion, not a debate. We haven't even had a discussion on the matter. So for Richard to actually provide an environment where we could all civilly sit at a table and discuss this is something that's not happened in the 9/11 Truth Movement to date.
But he's referring to the attention given to those who were part of that.
Well, I
That
understand
probably should
that.
not
So
have
you
had-
you have to
yeah.
give everybody a chance to bring their view to the table,
Well,
even
then
if
why
it's
not bring
erroneous.
hologram people in?
I
You
know
what I'm saying?
that's
It's like-
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do we draw them? This is why I talked about standards earlier. It's like I mean, for crying out loud, they're talking about witnesses who they agree with and disagree with at the same time. Why are we giving that any credibility? And I
Because this, I guess this isn't as clear
I want to
drawn.
revert back to Adam because he's
Yeah.
he's saying some stuff I think it needs to be said.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
No, listen, it's fine. I don't particularly enjoy doing critique videos of people. I shouldn't be having to do this, all right? But I'm trying to bring to light that there is facts and there is speculation, right? I'm careful to speculate to say that I think Ziad Jarrah wasn't on Flight 93, and I think he's an Israeli mole, right? That's speculation. I'm working on a theory with that. But what am I using as evidence? Well, when I have phone calls, 6 of them, saying that there's only 3 hijackers on board, and there were 3 guys that are dark-skinned males, Google Ziad Jarrah. Does he look like a dark-skinned male? He's white. He doesn't fit the profile of a terrorist, even his profile background. But guess what? This doesn't exist if you don't believe in hijackers. You wouldn't want to study that which you don't think you believe in. And this, Gene, is my biggest problem within the truth movement, is that you have people like Barbara Honegger, Thierry Mason, Craig McKee, Adam Ruff, and I can name you 50 people, but I can name you 6, maybe 7 people I would recommend to talk about the deeper geopolitics of 9/11 that is often misrepresented by the very people that you had on the conference yesterday. And this is my biggest beef. That's my biggest beef. That's all. I don't know them personally. They probably are nice people.
And
But
respectfully,
guess what? But guess what? If they're proposing these theories as fact and then undermining the very people who helped build the movement, like Chandler and Costi, do you know what Craig McKee did and Honegger did to these 2 guys for 10 years? And you want me
Okay.
to respect these people? I can't do it, Gene.
I don't know that. But respectfully, Craig McKee as well. He said the same thing, and Richard corrected him for it. That we want to. Xander was the best on. He was the most level-headed of the bunch there. Everybody kind of
I would disagree with that.
of the bunch. He didn't take any pot shots that I saw.
No,
He giggled once.
That's irrelevant. The pot shots are irrelevant. It's the points that were made in the conference. All 3 of those guys, for the exception of Chandler and Costi, are wrong. Flat out wrong, demonstrably. And you know what? Why are we talking to them? Why don't you talk to the people who are actually there? Gage brought up Adam Isenberg. Guess what? I spoke to Captain James Schwartz of the Arlington Fire Department. He never heard of him. And not even that, Adam Isenberg basically said nobody was hurt by jet fuel. And then I said, well, guess what? There's 24 people who actually burned by jet fuel. One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Brian Birdwell. He told his story throughout the world, 60% burns. You know what Adam Isenberg said? He's a liar. Why are we giving this guy attention? Why are we giving this guy attention? That's all I'm going to say. Why?
Okay, thank you, because you're right. And these are things that need to be discussed somehow. These are the many, many things that need discussed and gone back and forth. And I appreciate you bringing them to attention. You're just as impassioned as I do, and we come off wrong to people. I thank you for that. Ray, you're up.
Please send me the phone number for James Schwartz, Adam.
I'll send you the email. What's your email? What's your email?
I'll get it to you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ray, you're up.
Yeah. David talked about evidence of the use of explosives, and you can maybe that's a good point. You know, what is evidence of explosives? Let's dig into that.
I'll give you a minute here, brother, because I know you love to get into it.
But I'll keep it very short. Explosives cause fragmentation. That's the it's a blast. It causes fragmentation. I posted a collage in the chat. Can you look at that one? It's a picture, 2 pictures of the lawn in front of the Pentagon and the helipad, and it's in the chat.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, okay.
And coming up.
But if we look at what we see, and we see fragmentation, and there's a lot of fragmentation going on. It's not only the piece with a letter on it from the plane. These are plane parts, and not only plane parts. I zoomed in. There are interior building parts from the ceiling, etc., etc. And this was blasted apart. Something blasted something apart here. And if there are no human remains found in this, I doubt it. I think that human remains were found, but it was never told to us. And because they were cleaned up on the day itself, there's no report on the cleanup from the FBI. There's no accountability from the cleanup.
That statement itself is a speculation.
No, it's not true.
Sure, it's
Where's the report that they cleaned it up, and what they found and where they found it, and how much they found of size, etc. Where the photographs, where's the backup from that search? There's no backup. There's no knowledge in our mind because we were never told about it.
Hey,
But
Ray,
it's the most important part.
Can I say
Go ahead,
something really
Ed.
quick? As somebody from experience here,
Go ahead.
whenever
Ed.
you have to arrive on scene of an incident like that, the first priority in any situation of that nature is preservation of life. That's number one. The second priority is then preservation of evidence. So many times you have to actually get the evidence out of the way in order to preserve the life. So that's what happened on that day. They had to clear out a big area in order to set up the tents and things like that, the triage centers and everything else, in order to provide life-sustaining or life support sort of activities. So you're going to no crime scene is going to be perfect when you have situations like that. The first priority is always preservation of life. Second is preservation of evidence. So I don't know what all the details. I don't know if they're supposed to be reported out. I don't know what their reporting requirements are, but just keep that in mind. So ask the FBI. Hey, is there a report on this? Find out.
Fragmentation is the result of a detonation.
And then there's a plane.
And what we see there at the Pentagon was a massive explosion, and people discarding that explosion is discarding the attack. The attack was carried out with an explosion. It was not only the kinetic energy of a plane crashing into the building. It was a massive. You've been in the army. You've been in the army. You've seen things. Okay, but you've seen things blown up all your life, and explosives do that. If you have the kamikaze, they put bombs in their plane to attack ships. They put bombs in their plane. But it's simple in the sense that if we do not understand the massive destruction caused.
So I think we all agree that the plane hit the building and exploded on impact.
But a plane cannot explode. A plane cannot
full
explode.
of fuel, absolutely it can.
It will burn. It will burn. It will burn.
I gotta move on, Ray. Love you. I gotta move on. Cayle, you're up finally, brother. Aloha.
You want to share your screen?
Aloha, guys. Hey, I just want to say what a wonderful experience yesterday with 9/11 Con. It is such a positive. I can't even put into words.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we agree or disagree, unity must be a part of what we're trying to do here. We're all here for one reason, and that's the future of our children, right? Our next generations, not us. But I find those that are really upset about it might be a little questionable themselves. So just with that said, I'm just thankful to be a part of that. And you guys, thank you so much. And aloha, guys.
Right on, brother. Thank you.
Aloha.
Adam, you're up.
Yeah, hey, by the way, I just emailed James Schwartz and asked if he wants his email shared with Richard Gage. So I reached out just now.
Excellent.
So, okay, as for human remains at the Pentagon, this was in charge of Chris Combs, who was a special agent in charge of Washington, D.C. He arrived on the scene minutes after James Schwartz came on. He was in charge of search and rescue. Chris Combs, look him up. Chris Combs, C-O-M-B-S. He's in charge of search and rescue operations at the Pentagon, in which they found one part of a whole body near the entrance of the Pentagon, it was a woman, and that the human remains actually went to Dover Medical Base, where it was run by Tara Bloch. She's now retired from the FBI, but they ran the morgue at the Pentagon. And I want to clear a misconception what's happening here, because I see this happening with most people. I can understand why it happens too, so that's why I'm not very critical with these people. When you're comparing plane crashes with 9/11, it's not honest in the way that, like, we're used to seeing a plane. If we're seeing a plane crash in history, which is rare, by the way, you're used to seeing the plane actually trying to land safely with the fuel dumped due to, like, say, a mechanical error, for example, or maybe it hit some seagulls or whatever, where, you know, they're landing on their belly, they're trying to land in a open field, or in the ocean, like Sully did with, you know, that movie with Tom Hanks and whatnot. They go right into the Hudson River. That's not the case with 9/11. 9/11, they wanted to hijack these planes while it's fully loaded and crash them at the highest speeds possible. It's an extremely rare anomaly in history. The only times we ever saw that was PSA 1771 and recently Germanwings 9525, where the pilots actually, one plane was hijacked by a guy, that's PSA 1771. He crashed that plane at 700 miles an hour and broke the sound barrier. Go take a look at the debris of 1771. Does it look like a plane crash there? No. Germanwings 9525. That happened in 2015, where the pilot, the head pilot, went to the bathroom and the first officer locked him out, took control of the airplane, and crashed inside the Andes Mountains. That happened in 2015. And he crashed, I think, at like 400 something miles an hour. Go take a look at the debris field. Does it look like a plane crash there? Intentional plane crashes look nothing like regular plane crashes at all, where the plane from a regular plane crash is trying to fly safely, and where you see large pieces of the plane, the nose, the wings, the tail, even whole bodies. But that's not the case with intentional plane crashes, that the ones I just mentioned with you. And not only that, on 9/11, all four of those planes were fully loaded to go from East Coast to West Coast. And on Boeing 757s, 220-23 series, they hold 11,000 gallons of fuel. That's 78,000 pounds. In essence, it's a bomb. So what you saw at the Pentagon, basically that huge explosion and the outward of debris, that's exactly what you would see with an intentional plane crash, fully loaded plane. That's what you saw. And you're not going to get whole bodies. The body itself is 90% liquid. It's going to disintegrate. I see these people all the time. Well, why don't we see a whole body? Why don't we see a hand or a foot? You ever look at James Pierre-Paul, a football player's hand, when he held an M80 in his hand? He has one finger left. Now just imagine 78,000 pounds of fuel while crashing a plane at 530 miles an hour.
Unless we could reproduce it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Right. I give it to you there.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. Right.
Some of that's speculation, but I mean, I hear you, but a lot of that speculation, unless we could reproduce it.
What's speculation?
That there's only going to be bits and pieces of the body. I mean, they weren't sitting on the,
come on, I gave you two examples. 1771 and Germanwings 9525. They found no whole bodies in each one.
Say the second one slowly.
Oh,
Germanwings
9525. That's recent. 2015.
That's this one, right? That's this crash site here.
Yeah. They found no whole bodies. None.
This is the one where it flew into the mountain, correct?
Yes, that's the Alps. Yeah.
And the first one was 1771.
Yeah, PSA 1771.
Disgruntled employee.
Yeah, for those people who don't think that planes could go past their max speeds, that one went 700 miles an hour and broke the sound barrier. You ain't gonna find no whole bodies either one. Never before happened.
Thank you, Adam. Ray, you're up. I don't want this to turn into I wanted this to be bigger than this. I'm sorry, Mike Zarzano, you were first. Florida, how you doing, Mike? You're muted, Mike.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I apologize. My question is to those that believe an airliner impacted the Pentagon. there were 3 events that happened. You have the impact, you have the explosion, and you have the penetration. Each of those events have a signature that is evidence. I would first like to ask, where is the signature of impact from the wingspan of a jet airliner and the tail? Where is the signature of an explosion that would be, parallel to a plane with 11,000 gallons? If you look at
did you see the presentation yesterday?
Well, the point is the explosion.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Well, then that's the starting point. You need to go to 911speakout.org under Pentagon, look at Wayne Costi. All of that is laid out in incredible detail, even more than what we saw yesterday.
But what I see is, upon impact, is a very pyramid shaped, pointed, vertical explosion. It's very almost controlled in nature.
I'm looking at the walls.
Okay, and then the penetration of the building, that signature does not jive with a wingspan of the airliner and the tail.
But you haven't looked at the evidence. It's laid out for you in black and white very, very thoroughly.
Yeah,
thank you,
Mike, for that
then
question.
you can have this conversation.
Thank you, Mike. Hang on.
Excuse me. I wasn't even finished.
Right.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I didn't want this to be a Pentagon discussion about evidence. This was a more higher level conversation. We just spent 12 hours listening to Pentagon evidence yesterday.
Yeah, well, the photographs, okay, just in conclusion, if I may, in fairness.
Yes, in fairness.
And civility.
Yes, sir.
The photographs of the first 45 minutes after impact do not show damage consistent with a jet airliner. It's just that simple. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Mike. I definitely recommend Richard is making all of those videos available again if they aren't already.
Well, let me explain that. Yeah, I have uploaded all of the videos to the Eventee app. So the archive is now available to anyone who gives a donation, an average donation of $25 is suggested. A minimum is suggested. And people have donated more, people have donated less. That gives you access. Now, some people couldn't get to the event last night, so let me just quickly explain. When you make your donation, you get 2 emails back. One is from Eventbrite, who powers the checkout process. There's a very clear message from me in that email that says, look for an email from Eventee, ending in 2 E's. You'll get that email. It may have gone to your spam, but when you find it, all you have to do is click on join the event. That puts you into Eventee, the web platform on which you can watch the event. And then if you want, you can also download the app. So I think that's very clear that it'll be up for weeks, the archives. Well, probably indefinitely.
And Richard, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I could not get in yesterday. I got an email 1 minute before the conference started.
We can't hear you now.
Yeah, you need a new microphone, Sandra.
Yeah, it's my computer microphone.
Yeah, you get an external one, but go ahead. Just talk real loud.
Okay. I got an email 1 minute before the conference started to say to click here to read my ticket or something. And I went in and I just went in a circle.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, so what she's saying is she got an email from Eventbrite and it said to confirm the email, and it was just an
yes, because circle. You clicked on Eventbrite, and I in my email and the email from Eventbrite, it says look for any email from Eventee.
I know, I never got it.
Well, I have heard that about 15 times, and in 90% of the cases, they did find it when they looked for it in spam and so forth. You got to search for search for Eventee,
I did.
Eventee. Okay, I'm going to follow up on that, Sandra. Thank you
Okay.
for bringing it to my attention, and I'll make it good, of course, and find out the problem, because that has been the case with 2 other people.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And Mike, I owe you an apology, because everyone else got a chance to talk about it. You were just the straw that broke the camel's back on. I didn't want to get into the weeds of evidence, but you have a question, brother, again, or?
Who are you talking to?
Mike Zarzano. His hand was still up. I don't know if I forgot to lower it. Oh, okay, we're good. Ray, you're up, and then Cayle, David, Adam.
Yeah, I want to show a picture about the science behind.
Oh boy.
What fully loaded means. Fully
No,
loaded.
let's not do that.
No. Wait. It's very easy. It's very easy.
No way.
Don't shake your head.
You got 1 minute. You got 1 minute. Let me share the screen.
You see the picture? It's a collage. No, it's a collage on the. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. There's explosives and there's flammable liquids. Planes fly on flammable liquids. It's called jet fuel. And jet fuel is a flammable liquid. It's not an explosive. So if you, it's like a Molotov cocktail. A Molotov cocktail is not considered an explosive. It's a flammable liquid, and that's what it stays. Even if you fly it by 500 kilometers an hour against something, it will always stay a flammable liquid. And that's the thing, that a destruction by a flammable liquid or by explosives. And if you combine the two, then you have the Pentagon. You use bombs and you use the liquid. It's that simple. That was
Ray,
1 minute.
When I was at Travis Air Force Base, 1990, I wasn't there in 93, but, and we did get briefed on it. A C-141 aircraft caught fire on its flight line. There was an explosion. It was full of fuel, and it blew out the windows of the law enforcement desk, which are where I worked at. And so there was an actual explosion. So there is times when it will explode.
What was on board?
This is at Travis Air Force Base, the C-141 type aircraft.
Were there explosives on the plane?
I'm telling you, the witnesses who were there talked about explosions, and the law enforcement desk that blew the windows out of the darn LED because of the blast.
It was military base.
It was a C-141 cargo plane.
Yeah, so there could be explosives on board. You don't know. Look at the flames. Look at the flames. That's jet fuel. Jet fuel burns.
I can't hear you, Ray. I got the video going.
It flames. It looks at the video. It's so simple. It's a different kind of burning. It's not a detonation.
There was an explosion, my point, Ray.
Okay.
Oh, if you want to believe that, that's your thing. I just want to. Science is really hard on this. You know, it's a flammable liquid, and you have explosives.
Ray, there was an explosion.
And jet fuel cannot be an explosive. No way.
Ray, there was an explosion. The windows blew out.
I believe that you think that.
All right.
No, I don't think it. There
Cayle,
was. It
Cayle.
doesn't matter of thinking it. The way it happened.
Okay. Cayle, you're up. The war room's crazy.
Curious if the poll on the next 9/11 con, are we going to Shanksville? I hope so.
Richard, do you want to speak on that? Oh, you're muted, brother.
Great discussion item. I frankly don't know where we're going. I think we ought to cover the most common ground first. Shanksville would be interesting. I've been covering the World Trade Center on all of my webinars, but you know, after we cover some of these other things, we should certainly come back to the World Trade Center and do something that's, you know, a little unique and a little different than what I normally do. I don't know how to accomplish that, but Shanksville would be a great subject because guess what? There's people all over the map on what happened at Shanksville as well. Now, I don't know who the experts are on Shanksville. I've been living in an ivory tower for 15 years, so I need your help. not you specifically, everybody. I need a set of, say, 4 teams, maybe 3, maybe 12 hours is a little long for a conference like this. So maybe we can pare it down to 8 hours anyway. Shanksville's a perfect example. I just feel shy about who I'm going to be talking to. If you guys have any ideas, I'll listen.
Thank you for that.
I saw it was polling pretty good. It was that one and I forget the other one, but it seems like a topic everybody's interested in.
Thank you. I didn't get a chance to look at the actual poll yet. We didn't get any sleep the night before the conference. I can't tell you how much work this was.
I'd have to say you and Gail are perfect for what you're attempting to do. This is just like a breath of fresh air. For real.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you,
Great to
guys.
hear that. Because we did get our fair share of criticism, as you've heard here.
Of course.
As well. Yeah.
Of course.
David, you're up.
Okay, this is a very delayed response to Mike Zarzano, but I'm not going to discuss the evidence. I'm going to say you have to look at the evidence that's been put on the table. You cannot rationally engage in telling everybody what the nature of the damage was if it's all laid out in great detail and you don't even look at it and you're going to just set it aside and say something that doesn't have a rational basis to it. Look at what's there. You have to do the homework, and it doesn't take an infinite amount of effort. What we saw yesterday was you go to 9/11 Speak Out, go to the Pentagon tab.
Yep.
And go down towards the Wayne Costi.
This is the presentation.
There you go.
Where are the?
Go ahead and scroll.
Where is the PowerPoint slideshow?
What PowerPoint slideshow?
The 170 slides or so that you guys go through. This.
No, that doesn't exist.
Oh.
The thing is, okay, this is a myth. What happened was Wayne Costi wanted to get all of this stuff he'd been working on out there, and he didn't know how to do it. And he put it all into one big 5-hour blowout PowerPoint. I looked at it and I said, A, this is phenomenal information. And B, nobody's ever going to look at this. And so I talked with Wayne and I said, we need to redo this in small chunks. So what you just scale through are like, I think 17 little chapters, we call them. That's the PowerPoint right there, the whole 17. So you can go topic by topic through it. Most of these are under 20 minutes, maybe 10, 15-minute little snippets. So it doesn't take hours and hours and hours of investment. You scroll down to the topic you want to look at, and you take 10 minutes of your time, 20 minutes of your time, and look at it. I have a summary there. If you want to see the quick thumbnail sketch, that's what that one is. And if you go through that, it's like the index sort of illustrated. But then you scale down, you'll see the thing on Lloyd England, you'll see the thing on the C-ring exit hole, you'll see the thing on the debris. All of those topics are covered.
Okay.
And so pick the one that you're wanting to study up on, take 10 minutes, look at it, and then you can have an informed participation in a conversation about what you saw. You might reject what you saw, but at least you need to look at it.
Yes, thank you very much. Adam?
I think there's something that we can similarly agree on, is that we're not content to sit in a room or do videos on YouTube. Some people may be, but from someone like myself, and I think I can safely say for some people in this room, you're getting a little bit restless, a little bit annoyed at the fact after 20 years that this is the best that we could do. I say it's not. Now, not everybody's going to agree on the details of evidence and the details of speculation. And that's why we're in this conflict now. But I would submit to you that there's going to be very few people left in the end that are going to be on the side of the truth of history. Most people are not. And that's why we have not seen any real justice when it comes to 9/11. Why is that? We have overwhelming evidence that there is a inside job. And I hate that term because most of the people that were involved with this operation were from the outside. The inside was the cover-up. So with that being said, if we allow speculation as a form of evidence, just imagine yourself in a courtroom. You go to court and you go to court saying, I don't believe that a plane hit the Pentagon or Shanksville, whatever, any type of these deals. The judge or the prosecutor is basically going to tell you and say, well, what evidence do you have? And if you're going to say, well, let this 3-hour presentation be the evidence, well, that's not going to be the case. I'm asking you for evidence, each and every specific one of you, right? You have to make believe that you're an investigator, that you are in the courtroom every second of the day, even when you're not even in a courtroom. That's how you look at every event in human history. And that's what you want to look at. You want to look at without a preconceived worldview and a biased worldview. But if you're going to look at 9/11 and automatically say, hey, there's an inside job right away, no, you're automatically at a wrong point. You have to look at it and say, was there an inside job and how do I prove it, right? How do I prove it? Do I ask people who weren't there? I want to interview people who were there. And then I want to collect the evidence that's there and then try to get as much evidence that is not shared with the public, but is either in classified or whatnot, and try to declassify it. But right now, I can tell you right now, I can make a great argument that director of the CIA, George Tenet, basically committed perjury, right? But first, we have to get over the hump that there were hijackers involved, because if there's no hijackers involved, the CIA is not involved, right? The CIA knew about two. Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to tell you. There were 2 Al-Qaeda operatives living inside the United States. Not even living inside the United States, they were living openly, using their real names. Their names are Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, okay? They were behind some terrorist attacks, even drug running and gun running in Saudi Arabia. Everybody knew who they were in the intelligence community, all right? They were coming to the United States from a meeting in Malaysia with a high-level terrorist meeting. The CIA knew this. And then when the FBI found out that they had visas coming inside the United States, the CIA told them, you're not to share that with the FBI. But they're coming to the United States. Why don't we just detain them or arrest them or monitor them at least? The CIA told them, don't share that information because it's not FBI information. Those guys lived in the United States for 16 months without anyone knowing besides the NSA and the CIA and the Saudis. In the East Coast, the Hamburg cell, those guys that hijacked 11 and 175 and allegedly 93, those guys, nobody knew they were inside the United States besides the Israelis, the NSA, and the CIA. And they kept this information intentionally hidden, intentionally. I tried to bring this up to the public's attention and to any truth that wants to hear,
Yeah,
that
that's
I could show at least perjury on the sense of Tenet. But if you don't believe in hijackers or hijacked planes or any of that, guess what? We can't bring that to court.
It doesn't matter
what
what
evidence.
you brought it to the public's attention, and it doesn't matter what I believe. And this is where, again, I'm going to implore you guys to concisely get something together and let's get it emailed to Mick and present it. Because if you guys have this solid evidence, there's no reason we shouldn't be pursuing litigation for it.
I am with you 100%.
Thank you very much.
However, that's the problem. So is anybody going to take that with any real legitimacy? People are just going to basically say, well, you know, that's your opinion. No, it's not my opinion. I can prove it.
Well, then lay it out. That's what I'm saying.
Here's the other problem I see. How do you present evidence in a court that is arguing on one hand controlled demolition, which I believe it was, and therefore inside job, and on the other hand, we're pointing fingers to outside offenders. And so which is it? How do you bring those two things to bear to where they actually work in harmony with each other instead of against each other?
I don't have an answer to that.
Well, there are answers, is that the they could be on board and the hijackers could have been hijacked. So in other words, it doesn't mean that they actually pulled off the navigation of the planes.
I did ask Dan
Thank you.
Hanley that, and he did not. He said, just because there's hijackers doesn't negate. I'm sorry. Just if there was a Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, it doesn't negate the hijackers being on board. They could have went through the intention that they were on there doing something, and then they no longer had control.
Yes. You know, that's a great, by the way, that's one speculation that I'd never dismiss because it's reasonable that they could have hijacked those planes. People made calls, hey, we're being hijacked. Meanwhile, in order for the planes to ensure that they hit their targets, hit the World Trade Center Pentagon. But here's a flip side of that coin. Why didn't Flight 93 crash into a target? Why didn't Flight 93 crash into a target?
Something to think about. Richard, were you going to say something?
I haven't seen, and I haven't looked very hard, but has anybody here seen proof that those hijackers were on the plane, whether they got hijacked themselves or not? I've seen a lot of proof that they probably weren't on the plane.
No, there's definitely proof they're on the plane.
So there is video, but there's no timestamp, if I understand that correctly.
Exactly. Those videos are fake.
No, they're not. Actually, at the Dulles security video, that's a Voron system camera system. And not only that, there's actually a victim of Flight 77 on that video in front of the hijackers. Her name is Marie Sopper. She's actually holding her cat in an animal red basket. She died on Flight 77. That legit, and that was coming from Motley Rice. Motley
And the
Rice.
DNA of the hijackers, however you describe them, was part of the DNA. Presumably, if you believe the evidence, which I do, it was found in the. I actually showed. Well, I never got to that. I cut off the last whole 20. I mean, okay. I didn't get there. It's there. It's in the evidence in my in the.
And that Dulles video, video also shows 6 hijackers coming through that security checkpoint, not 5.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, one of the points that may I take one little point on
Please
this.
go ahead.
On the there is a downloadable file you can get from the Moussaoui trials called Pentagon Scene.exe. It's a Windows executable file. It shows a map of where all on the first and then second and then the third floors and all that. It's a map of where every bit of where all of the body parts were found. And then there's also an extra little segment in there for the body parts that were found in the sifting operation that were never located, but they just scooped up all the dust and everything. They sifted it and they found more body parts that way and so forth. But in any case, you have this map. And one of the interesting things, if you study that, is they have little ovals and they're color coded. And the little black ovals are the ones for which they don't have an identifying, but they're identified as Middle Eastern men. They're men, they're Middle Eastern, and 2 of them are brothers. And that was on those black ovals. Interestingly, all of those black ovals are up near the entry point, like in the E ring or the beginning of the D ring. It's very early on. And if you basically think about it, when the plane is crashing, the first part of the plane that's going to get disintegrated is the front end. And so if you actually have the hijacker DNA that was present in the actual cockpit, that's consistent with where it was found in the Pentagon. And then you have other DNA that's further on down the line. But you can go through and identify each individual piece. Like I said, if you hover over one, all the others of that same person will light up. And so you can actually do a pretty thorough job of understanding the nature of that distribution. Anyway.
Thank you. Ray and then Cayle.
Talking about perpetrators of what happened that day, we have voices of 2 of them. Radio communications with somewhere. They were on the radio, and they were talking. They were saying, "We have some planes. We're going back to the airport. Please be seated." That's they say that is Atta. It could be anybody. But that voice we have, and we have a second voice, and that second voice is actually They say it was somebody on 93. And what he says is very, very important. And I think it's the most uninvestigated part of 9/11. He says, we have a bomb on board. And I think if you have a bomb on board, then you have to investigate that. Was it a bomb? Was it not a bomb? And then you go to the 9/11 Commission report and you start reading, and there's something that they say, yeah, there was no bomb on board. And then they have a note, and you look at the note where it came from, and it was an article from the local press in Shanksville that said, an FBI agent believes there was no bomb on board. That was the quote that was used to in the commission report. You can look it up, but it was never investigated in any scientific way. There's no report on the subject, and I think if you also look at Shanksville, you see a similarity to the Pentagon. It's the fragmentation of the plane. It's the fragmentation of human bodies, the size. 8% only of the weight of people on board Flight 93. 8% was found. 92% was never found. And these people were blasted to bits of bone. There was a report of a silver tooth. It was in the bark of a tree. It was embedded in the bark of a tree. The trees were snapped like matches. What happened there? Is that normal? Is that really normal? Or is that it was a much more powerful event that took place there? It's looking at every detail of 9/11 to comprehend that day.
Yep.
But we have to get our head around the voice, the second voice. He said, we have a bomb on board right before the plane was ditched, and not investigating that part, having a crater in that field surrounded by trees that were snapped like matches. It's not normal. There's something there, and it's the same for the Pentagon.
So again, I would like to try to bring this conversation to a more elevated level, in that we're looking for strategy on how we as a movement can best address this. Obviously, we keep talking about the evidence. The evidence is what we need to talk about, whether it's eyewitness remarks or actual physical evidence. How do we best discuss this? That's what I'm kind of getting at here.
I think we have to be disciplined and discard what is actually stupid and ridiculous. Just be honest with it, and stop playing around.
That what Richard did yesterday was the start of it. It was
and I'm glad he did it, because it really revealed some really telling issues. And when you got somebody relying on a witness and then disregarding the same witness, that's a problem.
That's a point. Cherry picking was a good point.
Not just that, there's many other things too, but it's just like, come on. And
Right.
then you got Barbara, who's like sitting there saying, talking about these witnesses. She called them critical witnesses. And then it's like, I asked a question, what scientific criteria are you using to determine what is a critical witness? Because it agreed with her official narrative, or her agreed with her narrative. So that's what a critical witness is to her. It's like, come on, it's like, what are we doing here? It's like there should be a way to analyze the witness testimony and put it on a bell curve and look at what's all in common and analyze it scientifically. But they don't do that.
That's one point. What David said, now lost my train of thought.
What I said was all of the witnesses are critical witnesses. Look at it all and then compare it to physical reality and sort it out that way.
That was something more on a higher level. I can't remember. Let's go
Higher
to Cayle.
level. That's what I said. He asked what I said.
On that specific item, yeah, but I meant as far as how we move forward.
I don't think you can move forward until you start really getting down to the point of, look, you got to get to you cannot entertain some of these ridiculous ideas.
Oh, I remember what it was. David had said he gave kudos to Xander. There was a way that was able to move forward between those camps of thought.
Right.
I mean, that is something there. If we could start building.
Can we disregard the rest of it?
Rest of what?
Yeah.
What's that?
I mean, okay. By the way, I want to give kudos to Wayne, because of the two of us, it was Wayne who first stepped forward and complimented Xander.
I want to give kudos.
No, huh?
Yeah, Xander, I want to give
Xander.
kudos to Wayne because he repeatedly thanked people for good questions.
Right.
And then he always came back, well, I just want to answer the question. And he gave it in an engineer's like 30-second response. I just love that. That was great.
My point is that he was the one that cued me on that. Yes, we in fact do have somebody here you can work with because they're willing to talk evidence.
Yes.
Craig McKee is not willing to talk evidence. And Adam Ruff is not willing to talk evidence, but Xander apparently was. Right. And so as soon as Wayne said that the first time, I thought, yeah, that's a good point. I jumped on board. And the fact is, I've had a conversation with Xander this morning. Not a conversation, we had some email exchange. And the idea that I brought up, I'd like to get back to that if I might for a minute, that idea of doing a little seminar, not being a lecture series, but doing a seminar where we'll have a problem set. I'll fill in the background for people that need fill in background on the math or whatever it is. And we can just sort of tackle a list of things where there can be buy-in on some of these issues because everybody is being equipped to actually look at the issues themselves.
Yeah.
And I really am excited about, I'm going to go forward. Hey, I'm going to go forward with that, whether anybody here likes it or not.
I
was thinking this is something that it could become a bigger deal. It's something Richard could promote if he saw fit. It's something.
Yep.
Anyway, but
I would love to see you go through your physics lab of downloading.
Yeah, I've had that up on my website for years now, where I have the tracker stuff, plus the videos, plus the calibration data, plus how to do it.
Yep.
All of that is there. It's under physics lab under one of my tabs on on my site. And only about a handful of people have ever even downloaded it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's there. Hey, you want to get involved? You can actually do the measurements yourself. And this is sort of like that same approach in spades, but it'll be more with personal involvement. I have a question here for this group. If I were to do a thing like that, how many here have any interest in actually participating? I see one hand, 2, 3, 4. Hey, great. That's what I'm thinking is some of you don't have a lot of science and math background. Others of you might be engineers or whatever, but it's from all over the map. And hey, I'm a teacher. My focus is on bringing people up to speed.
Yep.
So you can learn something if you want to join in with this.
All right. Richard, I don't know if you were trying to say something there. Your mouth was moving, but weren't hearing anything.
I was just talking to Gail real quick.
Oh, okay.
I muted myself.
I want to go to Cayle, Adam, and Ed, and then we're about 10 minutes to 7. I usually want to try to keep us under 2 hours. If you guys don't mind, I want to try to get my spaghetti dinner. Cayle, you're up.
The Matt's trying to raise his hand too.
I had a question for Ed on the evidence that hijackers wear on the planes. Over the years with the research, I'm kind of on the side where it's hard to prove that there was, except for some video through the TSA and maybe IDs that didn't burn. But if Ed has any links to what he's speaking about, that there's more proof that they were on the plane, we'd appreciate to see that. Maybe.
Well, there's the flight recorder data that they were recorded on the flights as well. Recorder. Yeah, and cockpit voice recorder. So there's that information, and there's also
even with that, because they're saying that people were on cell phones at the time, and the technology just wasn't up to speed.
The cockpit voice recorder
didn't really make sense.
True.
Yeah, I know, but is that what you're going on?
The cell phones is a whole different issue that I have to get into, which is I don't want to get too deep in the woods on that, but that's also not incredibly relevant.
Right, but the majority of the phone calls were from airphones, though.
Right.
And I pointed out that there's DNA evidence that people want to brush aside, but it's there, and I think it needs to be taken seriously.
Thank you.
And is that on your page there, David?
If you look at, I was trying to think where I've incorporated it, and I did put some of that in my the video that I have that's called AA 77 at the Pentagon, and that's it's in there, I believe.
All right, I'm gonna actually go to Matt, if you guys don't mind first, because he hasn't gotten to speak yet, and then we'll go Adam and Ed. Go ahead, Matt, you're up.
Yeah, hi, everybody.
Good to see you.
Thanks, you too, Gene. This may be sacrilegious, but I'm going to go ahead anyway and say the following. Yesterday, I watched some of it, but honestly, because of what was presented or attempted to go in front of a grand jury, that didn't happen. The science is well enough established in the form of exhibits for a grand jury to see, and that is the problem. We could figure out possibly what actually did happen on our own, but frankly, I wish we could put as much energy and focus and time and attention into coming up with, as you wanted to hear, Gene, how do we move forward? What's the strategy? How can we get, if not the lawyers committee, maybe county by county grand juries together? You know, what can we do? I mean, this, again, the science was beautifully handled in the past 20 years, converted into exhibits.
Yeah, I think Richard and Mick and Christina Borgeson and company are doing an awesome job with this new film project. She got 40 out of the $120,000 for this to present the 60 exhibits to the grand jury, to a grand jury. I think that's moving forward with the evidence you've been talking about for the last 20, for the last 20 years that we've gotten. They're moving that ahead beautifully. That is a great method to move forward. Yesterday was really just a way for us to start to reset and try to flush out all these views and give them their fair chance, their fair airtime, if you will. It wasn't something to hang our hat on as far as moving forward with litigation at the Pentagon, I don't think. It was just more for the 9/11 Truth movement to start discussions, if you will, over the Pentagon in a proper format.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
And Gene, we raised $2,000 more above our expenses last night, which all goes to the film
Excellent.
project.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Adam and then Ed, and then we're going to go around the horn and we'll end it.
Yeah, listen, I'm just gonna hop on some of the comments made by some people. First of all, I'll go with the reverse. For Cayle, actually there were 4 cell phone calls made on all 4 planes total, but the rest were air phone calls. And then you have employees at Logan, Dulles, and Newark who actually gave interviews with the FBI as well as the media. 2 people you could look up, actually, Vaughn Alex, A-L-L-I-X, Alex, who actually gave boarding passes to Mohammed Atta and Omar Abdul Aziz Al-Amari. And he also gave a boarding pass to, I want to say, the brothers, the Al-Shahi brothers as well. Richard Chuwe, who worked at Portland, gave his boarding pass to Mohammed Atta and Al-Amari as well. But then you have the security screenings who the FBI interviewed, and all that is available on the memorandum for the records, which is available at either archive.org, scrib.org, or on my WordPress, which I have, I think I have 4,000 files uploaded. So also now to the point that regarding Ed that said earlier about, oh, I'm sorry, no, it was David Chandler who brought up the trial exhibits. I've just posted in the chat room for everybody the prosecution trial exhibits, which you could just scroll up and you could get the whole list of the trial exhibits. It's hard to find nowadays, but it's up there. Just scroll on up and then you could take a look at all the evidence that they had, where it come from technical data, the analytical data, and physical data, as well as photographs taken at the Pentagon. It's all there. And also, I think, was it Ed or somebody else that brought up about human remains at the Pentagon? Somebody brought this up about why we see very few, there was an I think it was Ray or something like that, where he
Right,
said
I
there's
think.
very few human remains was found. Why would you need a bomb on the plane when the plane itself is a bomb? It has
That's the
78,000
disagreement.
pounds.
Ray is
that's-
thinking, Ray is considering the jet fuel will act like an explosive or not act like an explosive.
He is now. There's some truth to that. It's not an explosive on its own, but when it reaches air, it becomes explosive. So when it's and that's listen. I just Googled.
Yeah, anything aerosolized can become an explosive.
Yeah, it becomes an explosive. And you can see, look, you can see that with every single plane crash in the history of man. Just take a look at how they crash. And I think you were playing a video which shows the plane, that was a test run that you were playing. I think that test run was in 1980 or something like that. The plane exploded when it hit the ground because of
Look
jet
at the plane that
fuel.
hit the towers.
Yeah, the aerosol. The jet fuel's it's exposed to aerosol, which acts as acidic and it blows up. That's what happened. So, and also I'll end it.
This is a little unrelated, but I found this fascinating. As a carpenter, I went to apprenticeship school, and the instructor had creamer, just coffee creamer, and he said, "Did you guys know this was flammable?" And we all laughed. And he took it in his hand, held it up real high, and just let it sprinkle out his hand, and held a lighter down, and that went up. This huge flame just took up all of this dairy creamer, because in a I don't even know how to explain that properly. Fine particulate in an airspace, evenly spaced out, can become flammable.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll just send it like this too, because I see Alfred posted in the room regarding the video at the Pentagon. When will we ever see all of them? The one crappy one proves nothing. Well, Alfred, I don't need a video to know what happened at the Pentagon. How do I know that? Because I will just listen to the people who were actually there. And it's compiled over time through John Judge and Penny Schroeder, who back in 2002 compiled all the lists of the people that were there. 86 people who were actually in the vicinity of the Pentagon saw a plane hit the Pentagon. And for a lot of people, that's not enough. Why? Because for over the past 20 years, they've been beaten down by dozens and dozens of people who claim that because there's little plane debris, that it doesn't look like a plane crash, and that why don't we see whole bodies, right? They tend to dismiss all these people, as well as the physical debris that was located all throughout inside the Pentagon and outside. And like I said, I interviewed the Pentagon incident commander, and I'm the only one to ever interview him, which I found horrifying in my own right. I couldn't believe it. I'm a nobody. I'm a small channel. I'm a nothing. And you would think after 20 years, we would have people who basically reached out to the people who were actually there. And nobody ever tried to reach out to him. He told me something. I'll end it like this. He told me something off the record. I didn't want to put it on there. He said in the year 2007 to 2011, he was getting death threats from people. And they actually wrote letters to the Attorney General of Washington, D.C., calling for the mass arrest of him and Chris Combs for lying about what took place at the Pentagon. They wrote to his children. They wrote to his wife. They wrote to his two sons. They wrote to the Attorney General. They used to post things at his house, paste things in his house, all because he knows what happened at the Pentagon. Yeah. And that's why so many people won't interview the people who were actually there at the crime scene. Why? Because it will challenge their worldviews. Well, guess what? Like I said before, just because you believe in hijackers or that the planes were hijacked doesn't mean that you're going with the government on their side.
Right.
But you actually, what I said before is that because it's been so beaten down onto you by so many people that's the official narrative, I'm telling you, there's more to it. And I'm willing to help you and tell you what I know took place. And there was a cover-up and other anomalies that took place. And I'm willing to implicate the CIA, the NSA, the Israeli Mossad, Saudi GID. All of them had a part to play in. But we can't get there as long as you have these preconceived beliefs that are not based on evidence.
Thank you. You guys, now I'm going to limit you to 1 minute because it's now in overtime.
And not only that, but Sean, who hasn't spoken yet, raised his hand.
Yeah, let's
real quick to answer your question about strategy. I was prepared to give my my idea a good express that today, but obviously because of the event that happened last night, we got sidetracked on that, which is fine. I can present it next week or whatever.
Thank you.
And also with respect to Xander's presentation, he did make one comment that was I have to bring up as being not exactly true, because I will bring it up only so people keep it in mind. He said that because of his conclusions in his presentation, that it is impossible for a 757 to have struck the Pentagon, and that is not true. What is true is if his presentation is accurate, if what he says is true, then what it means is the video cannot be relied upon in order to make that conclusion.
That I thought that same thing. It didn't necessarily negate the plane. The film still could be doctored, but yeah. Ray, Ed has brought up a good point that a lot of times, you could probably articulate this better than I, that we have a certain amount of information and we form these beliefs that this is the way it is, but new information can be introduced to change those beliefs, basically, to simplify that completely. Thank you, Ed. Ray.
The strategy going forward, I think that what we're doing now, listening to one another as adults, that's what I took from the conference yesterday. I saw a lot of adults and a lot of everybody has their ego, everybody had their storyline but it was even Craig. He misspoke, but it was really that he mentioned it was a plane, could be a plane, could have been a plane, he said, and I was really laughing because it's if we have to talk with one another, to learn from one another and listen to one another and think about what the other is saying, because it's. There were no weird. It was not a witch on a broomstick or something like that, or some missile painted like an airplane. That did not come up. So they were all adults coming together, and I think that we as humans and adults can really get further in if we listen to one another. That's what I took from yesterday. It was really a good listening session for all of us. It was long, but it was also the questions asked by the people against each other. They were really formulated, and it was also not name calling and so I think that's the way forward. It's the way forward to really talk with one another as humans.
Yep. And Richard cut out.
I wanted to end and not get scientific, Sandra.
Yep. Thank you very much, Ray. I appreciate that. That was a good first step, I think. I agree with you.
Yes.
Sean, what do you got for us, brother?
Hi, Gene. Thanks. I was wondering, could you please, if you would, pull up some graphics for us, possibly? I think we could really cover a lot of ground quickly by just looking at two images, and that's the Pacific Southwest 1771 that was brought up earlier. But this comparison, let's run it alongside Pan Am Flight 103 and look at those two crash types and consider how those planes crashed. And I think that will clear up a lot. Thanks.
Pacific 1771, and what was the other one?
Pan Am 103.
Pan Am 103. All right, let's try this. Screen 2. So here is Pan Am 103. Just getting a couple. If anybody sees an image, or Sean, do you see an image that you would like me to focus in on?
Any of those are sufficient. You can see it from the thumbnail.
Okay, there's that one. And then we go over to, this is Pacific 1771. I'm trying to find, wow, that didn't really.
That'd be in PSA.
PSA?
Remember, PSA 1771 is the intentional suicide crash at high speed. with no wreckage, no.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of these photos here.
Right. And now Pan Am 103 is a bombing. That's all. That should be enough. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I guess. So wait, Pan Am was a bombing.
Pull up the Pan Am debris.
This is it. The large chunks of plane.
So you can use these for your mysterious 9/11 flights 77 and 93, and you can really start to ask the elevated questions like perhaps Hani Hanjour didn't have to fly well on flight 77 because there was a sixth hijacker, or perhaps the reason that flight 93 was taken down because the passenger revolt was successful because Ziad Jarrah wasn't on the plane. There's more questions we can ask, but this is a very good jumping off point. Thank you for showing the visuals, Gene. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the. All right, we are at our end, but does anybody have anything for the group? Well, let me just say something first. This was awesome. Yesterday was awesome, but to have all of you, and I know we're all contentious with each other at times. I am. I can't even apologize because I'm an idiot at times. As Alex Jones said on Joe Rogan one time, he said, I'm an idiot. I mean, sometimes I come off as an idiot, but I think you guys know my heart, and I know all your hearts, and why we're here and why we're in the 9/11 Truth Movement is we want justice for 9/11. And I thank you so much for coming here and being civil with each other. And we're just going to continue to move forward. Anyone else have anything for the group? Thank you all again. Have a great rest of your day and a great week. We'll see you next week.
Aloha, guys.
Aloha.
Aloha.